The drought has been lifted, and we can now drink the cold, refreshing liquid known as Pokemon Legends Arceus news. That's right, in case you haven't heard yet because you've been at work all day like me, there will be a Pokemon Presents on Wednesday, August 18th, 2021 at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. The Pokemon Company said on Twitter to tune in for news about Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl and Pokemon Legends Arceus. I know, we're all jumping with sheer excitement. But that's all the more reason to take the time to temper our expectations a bit and remain cautiously optimistic. Consider this your one-stop spot to hear what we can realistically expect to see at Wednesday's Direct. Pokemon Legends Arceus will be the truly delicious topic to discuss here, of course. So, let's first go over Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl and see what we can expect from that. As per my analysis on the very short clip we got in the Nintendo Switch OLED model trailer, we can expect to see the improved graphics to the in-battle models and environments for BDSP. We can also expect to see improvements in the overworld and possible tweaks to the chibi proportions, since we saw tweaks to the proportions of the full-size model of the male player character. The colors in the overworld will most likely also be made to be brighter and more vibrant, just like what we saw in the OLED model trailer. The next thing we can expect to see from these games are the modern mechanics Ilka said they will introduce to the old formula, which will probably be things such as perpetual access to your full Pokemon storage, quality of life improvements that we got in Sword and Shield for breeding, move tutoring, leveling up, and competitive stat control. This is just the tip of the iceberg here, so I'm sure there are more things that I'm missing, but those are some of the best things I remember being introduced from newer Pokemon games. The last thing we can expect to see from BDSP are important features, such as the very slight chance we get to see a Distortion World arc or something like it, Mega Evolutions, and if so, then new forms for fan-favorite Pokemon, an in-depth look at how the Sinnoh Underground works now, features for the Poketch or some sort of replacement item like a Rotom Dex, how they'll be handling HM puzzles, and maybe even some features we haven't seen before. Now, none of these last few things I mentioned are promised. It's very possible that this is a complete one-to-one remake of Diamond and Pearl, maybe including some Platinum elements, so don't be surprised if that ends up being the case. If you are unhappy with it, just wait until Legends releases 3 months later, or use your large sum of $60 to buy a better game in the meantime like Temtem, which should be releasing on Switch around the same time. Now, let's get to the real juicy stuff. Pokemon Legends Arceus. Our ideas can run wild with this one, so let's take a look at what we know and only make predictions with that. The first thing we know is that at least most of the game is in an open area with a rotatable camera. It's unclear if the camera will barely move up and down like it did in Sword and Shield, or if it will work the way it should and allow us to view the sky as well as the ground below us with completely free camera movement. We will probably be able to infer the answer to this based on whatever footage we see in the upcoming Direct, since it's a very long one just for focusing on 2 game releases. We'll also most likely find out if indoor areas will have a controllable camera as well. The second thing we know is that Pokemon roam the world, and we can catch or enter battle with them supposedly seamlessly. It's unclear if seamless, in this case to Game Freak, is closer to something like Okami, where you get locked into an arena of sorts, where nothing else can enter or exit the vicinity you're occupying, just with turn-based combat of course, instead of being hack and slash, or if it's something more like Xenoblade, where it's real-time movement with an ATB battle system and an invisible distance that the enemy can stay locked onto you for, with the chance that more Pokemon may join in on attacking you. From what we've seen, I'm leaning more towards the latter, but Game Freak has promised us fancy words before, only for the actual product to be nothing close to the grand thing we expected. Just look at Dynamax Adventures, where they said we'd be able to explore a vast underground den, when really, all it ended up being was a glorified menu. Either way, it's very likely that we'll be finding out just how seamless our experience will or won't be. And that doesn't just count for battles and catching mechanics. When we enter a house, will we be seeing a transition animation, or will we just walk directly into the house and be able to move around right away? Are there going to be invisible walls on hills that stop us from going up and down slopes? Or will they have actual physics and make us slide down instead? These questions and more will probably be addressed. The third thing that we know is from leaks, and that is how we are, in fact, going to be seeing an ATB battle system this time around. I discussed this and many more things I'm about to talk about in my leaks translated video, but the gist is that a 100% credible leak source said that the combat will be ATB, meaning there is cooldown on Pokemon attacks and an invisible moving timeline that works in real time will decide who gets to act next. If you've ever played games like Final Fantasy VII, Child of Light, or Xenoblade, then you already understand how this works for the most part. This direct will almost 100% be covering how battles work. The fourth thing we know is also from leaks, and that is a few ways that we'll be able to interact with Pokemon. We will probably find out why we have a dodge roll mechanic, but we will also probably see explanations for how we can use Pokemon to ride, glide, and climb mountains. I'm also really hoping for some sort of swimming functionality, but unfortunately that's very unlikely given it wasn't included in the screenshots, and if this game really is following Breath of the Wild's lead, then swimming will probably not be very fun, if it exists at all. On top of this, we may find out if we can use any Pokemon that fits a certain archetype, or if they choose to do things the wrong way and only relegate these functions to a singular breed of Pokemon for each function, like they did in X and Y and Sun and Moon. Most importantly though, is how can we interact with all of our Pokemon? Will they actually travel alongside us outside their Pokeball, like they should? And if so, will it be implemented correctly this time? Or will it be a dumpster fire like how Sword and Shield handled follow Pokemon? Will we have a Pokemon camp type of functionality? And if we do have any of these, we'll most likely be finding out on Wednesday. The fifth thing we might be seeing in this direct for Legends is some more information on the story. Now, I really hope we don't, because I like how mysterious they seem to be keeping it, but regardless of if we're shown anything or not, I hope it does end up being a very entertaining and lengthy one. That's all I have to say about that. Now, let's get into the more technical side of things. Yes, we can expect to see some improvements to the graphics, frame rate, draw distance, and empty world. The biggest one I think we can expect out of these is to see the world filled up much more, particularly in the town. Even with Sword and Shield, the first trailer for that game had no overworld Pokemon or NPCs, and we obviously had those in the final product. The real question is how improved will all these things be though? For the frame rates, I already explained why they are the way they are in my final analysis before E3 video for Legends, but I find it very unlikely that you will see the same frame rate issues here because of the nature of the process I explained. Well, assuming the footage we see ends up being recent, of course. We can definitely expect to see a better draw distance for wild Pokemon than Sword and Shield, but again, it's unclear how much better, as well as unclear how they will be handling the Pokemon to become visible and invisible again. The graphics I don't think need much of a touch-up, except maybe some grass clipping through flowers I noticed, and of course the Pokemon models can always use more help, but that's mostly with their lack of animations, lack of personality in their idle animations, and detachment from the world they've been dropped into. I'm really hoping they show us the Pokemon actually living in their proper habitats in believable ways, but I'm not holding my breath. Finally, we can expect to see what this game world has to offer. Will we be seeing side quests? Are they going to give us more cryptic lore to feast on before the game releases? Will we see environmental puzzles that we'll need to solve with our Pokemon? How many Pokemon will even be in the game? Will the world around us change dynamically? Will weather patterns be implemented naturally or be forced in an awful way like in Sword and Shield? Will NPCs feel alive with at least Majora's Mask-esque implementation? You know, a 2-decade-old game. Will there be multiplayer elements for us to explore, or is this solely a single-player experience? There's so many questions here, and while not all may be answered on Wednesday, we can still expect at least some of these questions to be explained. I'm just going to remain realistic and cautiously optimistic as I watch it all unfold. Or we could be seeing none of these things and only get a 30-second teaser at the end of the presents. Who knows?